now about 17 minutes after the hour of 7 o'clock on this Wednesday morning. I'm Kimberly De Souza, and you're on the Now Morning Show. Now, it's 1 year after the last Soufriere volcano would have erupted in the St. Vincent and the Grenadines. And, of course, what we've been hearing from most people on the ground is that the effect is still evident. But the International Federation of Red Cross and Red Cross Crescent Societies is actually focusing its efforts on helping the citizens on the island with the recovery. So on the line with me, I have the Deputy Operations Manager, Mr. James Bellamy, and Director General, Mrs. Dora James, from the International Federation of Red Cross. Good morning, and thank you so much for joining us on Now.
Good morning. Thank you for having us.
Now, Mrs. James, I mean, you were living in the red zone, and you would have experienced firsthand what it felt like to, hear the words that the volcano is about to erupt, and you had to evacuate your house. I mean, how was that for you?
On the 29th, when we had that information that the volcano was in its effusive state, there was an edgy feeling. You wanted to find out, well, what is it going to be like? And what are some of the impacts this is going to have on you? And so you start preparing, but preparing how? You had to have a specific focus. And you kind of use the impact that you thought you'd feel to focus you. For example, we would have had some challenges in thinking about where would we go and where would we be housed? What would we have in terms of our support? And how long are we going to be there? So those made us very edgy.
And what has been the impact? I mean, we would have seen some of the pictures, but for someone on the ground, what would have been the impact of that, eruption on this small island?
Beginning from the 29th, as I said, the impact started. And when the explosive eruption began on the 9th of April, we had an immediate internal migration. According to the government statistics, there were over 20,000 persons evacuated. We also had emotional and psychological impact because there was that air of uncertainty. Although you would have put certain things in place, you were not sure how they would mesh, how they would fit. For example, how long are we going to be out? What would happen to our resources, our business, our farms, our homes when we left? And how will we generally manage? We also had that emotional impact on families abroad, families and friends, because they were getting the information. They were not on the ground. The radio was sharing information. You had information on the television, and you had social media that was going fast and furious. And all these mixed information that were being shared created that air of uncertainty and caused persons to be emotionally distressed. The heavy ashfall was also a negative impact in as such, because when we saw the quantity, it was frightening. And you couldn't help but thinking how you would get rid of all this ash at the time when you were ready to go home. In general, there was a national impact because government now had to divert budgetary funds and to prepare for food and clothing and shelter for all of these people. And we have to also consider that there was an impact on the resources on island because we would not have had everything we needed at the immediate onset to deal with all the needs that were created.
Now, Mr. Bellamy, how would the Red Cross have stepped in? Because Mrs. James just explained that, the government had to step in and they had to help those residents who were displaced. So how did the Red Cross also lend its support?
Well, we provide support of many different sectors. I think starting off with the provision of drinking water for people for the first 3 months, moving on to provision of over 3,000 hygiene kits and household cleaning kits, helping people to stay clean, stay healthy as they had to move and relocate out of their homes and into shelters or into family and friends' homes. We also provided over 1,000 people with cash assistance. That gave them the independence and the ability to go out and get exactly what they needed. These people know what they want and what they need and what was the impact of having to relocate your whole family. So the cash assistance proved to be successful, and it was also replicated by other organizations. Moving forward, we also, and Dora spoke to it a little bit there, around mental health issues, providing children with child-friendly spaces as families had to relocate and find new accommodation, pushing them into kind of unfamiliar context. We were able to provide child-friendly spaces, provide a place for parents to talk, to kind of address some of these mental health issues. And also then as the eruption or as the disaster plateaued out and things started to go back, or we could start thinking about moving back to normal, we were able to support over 500 children with kits to go back to school. And then part of this sort of school program, we're also able to work with the Ministry of Education and some of these highly vulnerable people that remained in the collective shelters managed by the government to move into rental accommodation. This helped them move sort of on the path to recovery, getting out of this kind of emergency housing situation, finding a dignified shelter solution, and allowing them some space and time to find a long-term accommodation, which continues to be a challenge for the people.
Of course. Now, Mrs. James, it is 1 year later, and since this volcano erupted, I mean, what is this scene like on the ground? I mean, is there still a little bit of fear that it might erupt sometime soon?
You would find that with some persons, other persons are going about believing that they have some years ahead. And they would judge that based on what happened before. We had 1979, this year is 43 years. Last year was 42, so there's that feeling that we have some time, but we're still watching, it's still steaming. Every now and again you would have the smell, but we are living with it. Most persons have been almost back to normal. There are some persons who are still in shelters, and we look forward to see the day when they're able to go home. Right now, government had built a number of houses, and James could speak to that. Red Cross also continues to assist with housing, and we consistently try to meet the needs of the many vulnerable population that still depend on those minor support that we need to give. Besides housing, we could speak to the livelihood, and the livelihood program continues. Red Cross continue a livelihood program. James would also speak to that, but people continue to work hard to try to be back to the state where they were before the explosive eruption and even beyond. We know that many of our farmers are challenged because they have to farm the soil, and it's in many cases, especially in the red zone. When we talk about the red zone, we talk about Chateaubelair, Richmond, on the northwestern side, but we also have Fancy, we have Owea, we have Sandy Bay, and most of the persons in those communities, Magum, we depend on fishing and farming. And so the farmers continue to struggle to turn over that ash so that they can have their produce going. We have the challenge of where some would grow, and sometimes they reach a particular point, and now that we have in the sun, sometimes you see they start dying. But those are the challenges we have to continue to work out. I mean, nature has its way of dealing with certain things, and we respect nature. Also, financially, the persons continue to struggle to meet some of their needs, because we have to understand we were out for a number of months, and some persons depended on the land for their livelihood. So they're now planting back and trying to get their income going. Some businesses were closed. Most businesses were closed, your little shops. Some persons who vend on the side depended on the schools. Schools were closed. And so we have those challenges. We continue to work with the government trying to meet all those needs. Red Cross continue to be that partner that would continue to fill the gaps and assist in bringing persons back to some form of normalcy.
Yeah. Now, Mr. Bellamy, I just wanted to know, in the midst of all of this, we had the COVID-19 pandemic, and of course, I heard that there was also, some talk about maybe dengue infections happening. I mean, how did the Red Cross, help the country and help the residents who were displaced in a time of COVID, and of course, trying to prevent this dengue infection from spreading to the residents?
Yeah, I think everyone's, we've had the COVID-19 pandemic around the world. That was something that hit St. Vincent, like everywhere else, back in 2020. They also had the dengue outbreak in that same year to deal with, followed on by the eruption in April, then followed on again with a small hurricane in July last year, and then several storms through the year. And of course, we have the upcoming hurricane season beginning in the next couple of months, which we have to get prepared for. So as the Red Cross here on Island is always working with the communities, helping them get prepared. I think in the this sort of mid to long term, in terms of supporting people who were affected by the eruption, we have the livelihood programs. We have been distributing, cash grants to help those people get their farming back, get their fishing boats, corrected and fixed, so they can get back to some kind of economic sustainability.
Yeah. So you're saying cash grants, help with the fishing and the farming and stuff in the country is what the Red Cross is basically helping with, right?
Yes, cash grants helping people that have been affected by the eruption. Also, working with people to repair their homes. In some cases, we've been able to provide people with building material and a little bit of support in terms of labor to help them repair their own homes. This is a big activity that is being taken on by the government and by other organizations, but the Red Cross is here to support some of those impacted people as well.
That's good. Now, Mrs. James, if anybody wants to, contribute or support the Red Cross in this initiative, is there a number or a website that they can go to support?
Yes, and we don't want them to back down. We want them to support because the programs are ongoing. St. Vincent and the Grenadines Red Cross has two email addresses, which I would share. svgredcross@vincisurf.com, svgredcross@vincisurf.com, and we have svgredcross@yahoo.com, svgredcross@yahoo. We also have a telephone number, direct line, 1-784-61888. That is 1-784-61888. And we just encourage persons to support.
Now, Mrs. James, is it only that you want financial support? Or, for example, if somebody wants to send across food items or clothing, do you also accept that as well?
Yes, we will. We will accept support in kind. Not so much clothing at this time. That period has passed, but we have an elderly population that continues to look to us, like for things like Pampers, wipes. We continue to share that. And food, yes. When we spoke earlier, we spoke about the concerns of getting food, not just in terms of the quantity, but in terms of the diabetics, those persons who are hypertensive, specific to their needs. So yes, whatever can be shared, we will welcome that. We also have persons with children, families who continue, as I said, the farmers who are now getting their feet back on the ground, getting some form of stability. We can continue to assist to guide them through.
Nice. Mrs. James, Mr. Bellamy from the Red Cross, thank you so much for joining us here now. I do hope that you receive some support because I know that you do need it at this time. And of course, we're wishing you all the best and we're hoping that you keep safe.
Thank you for having us.
And that was Mrs. James and Mr. Bellamy from the Red Cross just talking about how you can offer support to the people of St. Vincent and the Grenadines a year after the last Soufriere volcano would have erupted. Up next, we have birthday greetings. So if you have a birthday, who knows, sending it to Instagram, and we might be able, Instagram or Facebook, and we might be able to give you a happy birthday. So up next on the Now Morning Show, we're going to be doing greetings. Stay with us.